Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show, y'all. Look here, Richard had distributed out the samples to all of his friends, his 6 friends, right? And they had given it away for the most part, and people loved it. So nothing like it. Nothing like it. Nobody could compete with them if they decided to do this. And Richard, he really wanted to take this opportunity to get his father's business back in good standing. But when he really thought about it, he didn't know anything about selling drugs. He didn't know anything about this. And he was the type of person that if he took on something, he wanted to make sure he understood what was going on. He didn't want to have to rely on anybody else to really do those types of things. Because in this line of work, you got to be careful. So we gave Javier a call and told him what his concerns were. And Javier said, look, I'm vacationing right now. He loved to go to Spain, y'all. Cartel, Spain, right? So he told Richard, he said, go to the airport, get on the plane. I have a ticket waiting on you. And you come out here and let's talk before we actually do this. So Richard got on the plane and he flew to Cartel, Spain, right? And this is a beautiful place, beautiful old town. And the streets, like, they were kind of like a labyrinth, you know what I'm saying, like a maze, you know what I mean? And the buildings, you know, and with the balconies and the older people living in the neighborhood, they would have their rugs hanging over the balconies and all of this stuff and it was just a beautiful place. And the beaches, you know, the sandy white beaches, the water was beautiful, and it connected Europe and America, you know? And they would have this festival every year. This festival called the Carnival Festival. And people would be wearing these suits. You know, they kind of look like the Joker on the Joker playing card on the deck of cards. They dressed like that. And they would all be having fun, and the food was amazing. And Javier wanted to take this opportunity to see if Richard was built for this. And Javier loved his cars. He loved to drive fast. So he gets Richard, after he gets settled in, he takes him down and he said, we're going to take a ride. Now, these streets were narrow. No wide streets, y'all. These are narrow streets that weave in and out. Like I say, it's like a maze, a labyrinth. You know what I'm saying, in the town, right? So you had to be a skilled driver to navigate these streets. So Javier, he's got Richard down. He's in a Porsche. And he's driving, and he started switching the gears, and the tempo, the speed is picking up, you know? And Richard is looking at him. And Javier looks over there at him, right? Because one thing that Javier had learned from his father's name is Eduardo. And what he learned from his father is that how a man handles pressure is how he'll perform in this business. See, because selling drugs, it's not a kid sport. Let me explain what I mean by that, y'all. See, anybody can sell drugs. Anybody. Don't take that much intelligence. Let's be blunt. Find you somebody with it, buy it, sell it. It sells itself. But when you want to be on the level that Richard was about to be on, if he decided to go through with this, you got to be cunning. You got to have some suave, you know what I'm saying, ways about yourself. And Javier was about to test him and see. And he's weaving in and out of these small, narrow streets, and he's picking up the speed, and he's looking over at Richard, and Richard is looking over at him, trying not to be nervous, right? But he's getting nervous because Javier is moving fast, in and out, zipping. And if anybody were coming the other way with traffic, it was sure enough going to be a wreck, because it was not enough room for 2 cars going that fast at the same time. You know, it was just narrow streets, and Richard was nervous. And he saw out of the peripheral that Javier was staring him down. He's driving, but he's looking at him at the same time. And he says to him, he said, look, one thing I want to know is, can you handle pressure? And Richard, not knowing that this is a test, he said, sure. I'm under a lot of pressure now. I can deal with it. He said, but I'm not so sure if I can handle the business that we're about to take on. So Javier looks at him, he says, what is it about this that you think that you're not ready for? And he tells me, he said, I could go to jail, and if I go to jail, my family loses out. He said, but once you come in, once you become part of my family, your family becomes part of my family too. And anything that they got going on, if something were to happen to you, we would make sure that they were taken care of. This is a family thing. And I want you to understand what that means. That's what he's saying to Richard. And Richard looks back at him because he didn't see it as being this serious. He thought this was just business. But Javier, he's from Colombia. They see this different. Yes, it's business. But to get to the level that Richard was being invited to take, all because of the time that he had spent with Javier at the treatment center and how he treated him. This is an opportunity that people in the streets would die for. He was handing it to Richard to show his appreciation because he told him, if you ever need me, you got it. Now, he was giving it to him, but he needed to be sure because his father was a businessman. And his father wanted to make sure that they were not going to be doing business with somebody that was going to get in, get his money, and get out. Because in this game, on that level, there's no getting in and getting out. It just doesn't work that way. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. Real talk. See, a lot of y'all talk about wanting to be a part of the game and want to be a part of the lifestyle. Look here. You get on a certain level, it ain't no walking away. There's consequences and repercussions for this. And Richard was being told everything that he needed to know. So when Javier pulled up back at the house that they were at, and they got out of the car, he could tell that Richard was nervous, breathing heavy, sweating. And he started laughing. He said, "You ready? You can handle this, but you need to talk to my father first before we make this final thing." So they went upstairs, and they were waiting for a few minutes because his father was in the room talking to another man that Richard had never seen. And when Eduardo and the other man finished talking, the other man was walking down the steps and he spoke to Javier, and Javier introduced him to Richard, and Richard shook this man's hand and he told him, he said, "This is a very important man. He's key to the business. He's key to our operation. Respect him." So see, this man, he was the lawyer. He was the one that took care of all the problems if they came up. And Richard didn't really understand that at the time, but he remembered this man's face. He locked it in his head. So he went on upstairs and went into the room, and he got to sit down and he talked to Eduardo, and Eduardo told his son to step out of the room. So Eduardo, this is the head of the cartel, y'all. He's sitting there and he's talking to Richard, and he tells Richard, he said, "Look, the opportunity that I'm offering you is one that most people don't get in this line of business. Are you sure that you're ready?" And see, for whatever reason, at this particular moment, this was the opportunity for Richard to tell him that he was unsure. But for whatever reason, he didn't want to say it. He wanted it. He had become intrigued by all the trappings of this, by this few minutes, these few hours that he had spent with Javier. So now he says, "I want it." And Eduardo looks at him. He said, "Look here." He said, "One thing you got to understand is that you'll never be you again." Richard didn't understand it. He looked at him. He said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Listen, on the level that we're on," he said, "you're not a common street drug dealer. This is not what it is. You're going to be a major supplier for my son. He's going to set up his own distribution routes, and you're going to be in charge of it. You have to assume another life, another identity." He said, "But I can't walk away from my father's business." He said, "No, we don't want you to walk away from your father's business. We want you to become a part of your father's business. We want you to become that truck driver." He said, "So am I going to be moving stuff across the highway?" He said, "No." He said, "From here on out, you're the only one that will be able to make the call. But you can never live the lifestyle that you're about to be able to live in the open." He said, "You're going to have to learn to do like my son. When you want a vacation, you cannot do it where you live. When you want to splurge, you cannot do it where you live. Where you live, you have to maintain the lifestyle that people think you can afford. You are a truck driver, middle class. You cannot splurge. It's key. It's key." He said, "But when you go outside of town, when you go to other states, other countries, you can be you. But you can never be so closely aligned in public with the people that are going to be doing work for you. He said, look around. What do you see? You'll see it. You see a handful of the most trusted people in my life. These are the only people that really know who I am. And now you know. And you know what I do. So I'll ask you again, is this something that you want? Are you sure? And Richard looked at him. He said, yeah, I'm sure. He said, so from here on out, the 6 people that you gave me, you actually gave to my son, are the people that we'll be dealing with. But they can't get anything without you. Our people are going to set up the routes. They're going to be delivering, but they report to you. We're going to break all of this down for them. You are in charge, though. You benefit the most. Is that clear? So Richard looked at him. He was like, yeah, I got that. So he said, on all the people that you gave me the names to is Reggie, Stephen, Charles, Derek, Malik, and TK. He said, I need everything you know about them. Everything. Birthdays, socials, any information that you know about them. I need it all. And then my people are going to go visit them. And we're going to put them in play. Now keep in mind, these individuals, if something goes wrong, these will be the ones that go to jail. We're going to make sure that they understand how this thing works. You, though, you have to remain incognito. You have to remain a truck driver. While they're out there living the life, you maintain your sanity. You understand? Richard looked at him and he told him he understood, but he really didn't. He really didn't. See, he had seen on TV how the big drug dealers live. He had seen in some of the neighborhoods in the city where he was from, in Detroit, how things went down. What he was being explained, what he was being told is not what he thought this was going to be. And in an odd way, it made him feel more comfortable about the business. See, a lot of y'all think that's how it goes, but when you start moving up, you got to disappear. You got to blend in. They can't know it's you. They can't know it's you. So the operation gets set up. Everything is about to go down. He's telling them how many keys a week he's going to be delivered. They change it, make it once a month. He can only put out a certain amount here, a certain amount there. All of the routes are being put in place. All of the routes. So before he leaves, Richard is introduced to the lawyer. And he's told, if you have any problems, he hands him his card. You call this number. No one else is to have access to this number. If you have any problem with territory, you call me. If you have any problem with the police, you call me. If you have any problem with anybody, you call me first. You don't call Javier. You don't call Eduardo. He told him, you call me. The lawyer took care of everything, all problems. So Richard looked at him and he didn't know how to take that. He was being invited into an organization where it was ran like a corporation. You had people with assignments, specific jobs and duties. And this is what he was being invited into. So now, he takes the trip back home. And he's on his way home, he's starting to think of how great things are going to be for him and his family. But he can never tell his family, and he didn't want to, what he was really doing. So when he gets back, he calls all of his friends. And he gets them all together. And he tells them, this is the business. We're going to have 10 keys a week to distribute, 40 a month. We're going to assign different areas. Now, a couple of Eduardo's friends had come down, well, workers rather, not friends, had come down and to help explain to all of Richard's friends what it was they were going to do. And they were going to be strategic about this. They wanted these guys to distribute their narcotics on college campuses all over Michigan. They wanted that younger clientele. And they were going to use them to throw parties here, throw parties there, and distribute it and start to make these connections that they needed to make. And they did that. In the first few months, everything was smooth. But during the 80s, the drug epidemic started to boil over. There was a lot of violence, a lot of people ODing, a lot of things going on. And Richard, he was running the trucking business, but they were profitable without really having to have a lot of routes. They were making so much money that he was afraid that trouble was going to come. He didn't even have anywhere to put it. He couldn't even take it all to the bank. So he started hiding. He started to rent out these shipping places, and he would store the money there. Then he'd try to get it out of the country, and he was moving so much money at one time that he would have to contract with bankers on moving it, just to move it around. And the lawyer for the family took care of all of that. And he got money out of the country and set up in these offshore accounts. He was rich beyond any imagination, anything. After a couple of years, he wanted to stop. And he went to talk to Javier, and Javier told him that you signed up for life. It's not like you're doing a lot. All you have to do is make sure that the people under you are doing what they're supposed to do. You just make sure the money's coming in and you vacation and you do this and do that. But see, something had changed for Richard. He had met this young lady, fallen in love with her. And they wanted to build a family together. But Javier told him, you can go ahead and do that, but you still got to do this. And he was confused by that because he didn't understand what was going on. He already know that, when he signed up that this was for life, but he didn't take that literally, like, this is for life. This is for life. See, the people that worked for him, his 6 friends, if anything happened to them, so be it, they'll replace him, but he couldn't be replaced because he was the connect. He was the connect between the family and everything else that went on up under him. He couldn't walk away. If he walks away, the whole line falls. People don't seem to understand that everybody don't get to know the man at the top. See, let me break something down for y'all here. When you look at the news, you see El Chapo or Pablo Escobar and all these people that, we attribute to be, kingpins or whatever you want to call it, right? Or in the movie, Scarface and Sosa and all these individuals, right? We seem to think that those individuals that could be a part of that lifestyle, that everybody is able to sit at the table with them, and that's just not true. The people that are around them are the people that they trust. Anybody else is expendable. And you don't rise to the top in that game by coming up from the streets. You get invited to sit at that table for different reasons. You might have been a good earner, but somebody knew you. Somebody saw you. Somebody said, bring him in. They going to make money. It ain't that you going to make them money. Are you somebody that they can trust? And see, Richard was that person that they could trust. Javier learned that when he was in treatment. This is somebody that can be depended upon if things go bad. But see, in the dope game on every level, let me tell y'all something. It's got to be somebody to take a fall. That's on every level. You feel me? And as the kingpin, you have to build that in to your organizational structure. This is not complicated stuff. It's just unknown stuff. Most people don't know this. They don't know how that works. See? Now check this out. Now, Richard was never going to be a kingpin, but he was going to be instrumental to the organization continuing to operate the way it needed to operate. And if you want to find out how this continues to unfold, you're going to have to check out the next episode because it's coming. Really, please, check it out. This is how the game goes. I'm trying to give it to you so you'll know, keep your butt at home. But I know some of y'all going to listen to this and you're going to be intrigued by how it goes and you're going to try to set your own thing up. I'm telling you now, sit your butt down. Sit your butt down. Now check out this next episode, though. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.
I'm getting so tired.